Okay. Wonderful. All right, let's go ahead and begin. Good morning. My name is Stephanie Thomas. I am the Director for Great Streets in Retail, serving in the Office of the Deputy Mayor for Planning and Economic Development. I am quite pleased to have you join us today as we will discuss FY21 DC Local Equity Access and Preservation Fund, affectionately known as DC LEAF, which is comprised of 3 solicitations, one that is familiar and 2 that are new, which are the Neighborhood Prosperity Fund, which you are joining for today's information session, Nourish DC, and the DC Locally Made Manufacturing Grant. Throughout the presentation, I will ask you to put your questions in the chat. I will address them as I'm able to at the end of the presentation. And for those of you who may have joined by phone, I will give an opportunity for you to open up your microphone and be able to ask your question. So let's go ahead and begin. So in the DC economic strategy, the administration's vision is to become the global model for inclusive prosperity, and it's guided by 2 measurable goals. One of the 2 goals is to reduce unemployment across all 8 wards by race and educational attainment level. The Neighborhood Prosperity Fund incentivizes community development, economic growth, and job creation by local funds to provide financing for projects that attract private investment to distressed communities. As you may know, the notice of funding availability opened and released on January 29, 2021, and the request for applications opened on Friday, February 12, 2021, and will close promptly on March 15, 2021 at 4 p.m. That is the deadline for all applications. You can certainly find out more information on DEMPED's website at dmped.dc.gov. And we'll see the DC LEAF is highlighted on the carousel on the top screen, or you can also look at it on the Neighborhood Prosperity Fund. This slide deck and recording will be available after today's information sessions have come to its conclusion. For FY 2021, and this particular funding round, DEMPED is going to explore a 3-pronged investment strategy that supports our communities and deploys a maximum of $3.185 million towards commercial and mixed-use real estate projects that are in targeted census tracts. As I shared with you earlier, the DC economic strategy has 2 prongs. The first prong is to grow a vibrant and resilient economy by private sector expansion, and of course, to reduce unemployment in those communities across race, ward, and educational attainment, bringing them below 10% by the end of 2021. So we've just begun the year, and this is a real demarcation for us. So the work is still ongoing, and this investment is still incredibly necessary. The first The first funding priority was economic growth and employment. The second funding priority is food access and security. So Mayor Bowser released the Food Access and Food Security in the District of Columbia responding to the COVID-19 Public Health Emergency Report, and it outlined the current state of food security in the district. And we recognize that food insecurity is a chronic condition that existed before the onset of the public health emergency, when at that point, 10.6% of our district residents were food insecure. COVID-19 has certainly exacerbated that situation, and it's projected that our numbers as of 2020 will be at least 16% and even higher rates among vulnerable populations, including the elderly, children, undocumented individuals, and unhoused individuals. So under this funding priority, DEMPED is going to seek to fund those projects whose activities will provide healthy food-related goods and services in communities that lack healthy food options, so they are in food deserts. For example, they indicate a pattern of non-healthy food consumption, so there's low rates of fruit and vegetable consumption. They suffer from poor health indicators, so these are high rates of obesity, diabetes, and other diet-related chronic diseases that may have high concentrations of persons who participate in food assistance programs. So that may be the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, SNAP, or Women, Infant, and Children Food Packages, WIC, school lunch programs, or demonstrate other indications of need for healthy food interventions. Our third priority is healthcare equity. So in the inaugural Health Equity Report for the District of Columbia in 2018, it provided a baseline assessment of the health equity and opportunities for health in Washington, D.C. The report had several drivers, 9 drivers, and for driver 7, medical care, the report indicated that major investments over the past decade meant that primary care services, supply and availability had expanded across the district, and it was enough for the resident population. But there's a gap that persists, particularly in specialty services and urgent care. Additionally, access to quality maternity care we know is an important component of maternal health and positive birth outcomes. And even though the District of Columbia is not a maternal health desert, there is some challenge in accessing maternal health care, particularly as it lags in Ward 7 and 8 in the city in terms of that service. So I've highlighted that, again, need to reiterate that DEMPED will fund projects for non-residential commercial components of a mixed-use project in these targeted census tracts that have unemployment that's greater than 10%. But to now define under these 3 priorities what we will actually fund in terms of the eligible project, we have defined those projects as eligible projects as those that combine 2 or more of the following type of development. They're mixed use, so commercial portion only, retail, office, or special purpose development. And for this, we have defined that to urgent care centers and other health and medical facilities, but really with those that provide maternal health care. For mixed-use projects, the project must create a minimum of 4 housing units, and at least 1/4 of those units have to be designated as affordable housing. For retail projects, the property has to be in a commercially zoned space and commercially zoned property that is used solely for that business purpose. So more specifically, it's the sale of goods and products. And retail applicants can be, for example, stores and cafes and grocery stores, pharmacies, sit-down restaurants, coffee shops. Office projects and that classification is going to be considered on the location of the building, the current built environment, and the economic health of the market. And of course, as I mentioned, DEMPED is utilizing the SBA, the Small Business Administration's definition of a special purpose project as a property that is appropriate for one use or limited use, and a building that cannot be converted to another use without a large capital investment. So again, for this round, we have limited our funding to urgent care centers and other health and medical facilities that provide maternal health care. Location, again, the project has to be within the statutory bounds of the Neighborhood Prosperity Fund. You can find out if your location is eligible. There is an interactive mapping tool, and that's the actual mapping tool itself, but you can find it by going to www.greatstreets.dc.gov. That's www.greatstreets.dc.gov, and it has on there on the top bar maps. And you can click on the map, and there's a map for Great Streets, and there's a map for the Neighborhood Prosperity Fund. You can enter the address, and if it is in one of the colored zones that has the indication of the level of unemployment, then the project will be eligible. If it is outside of a qualifying Neighborhood Prosperity Fund census tract, it will not be considered. And we certainly check that in the application. So please make sure that you have done that before you invest time and energy to put together an application response for a project that would not qualify. Also, in terms of tenants, the developer of the project has to demonstrate a commitment to support the sustainability of local business tenancy. And that's by providing specific amenities and or inducements, which may include rent concessions or abatements. At least 50% of your tenants must be identified and or secured through letters of intent, evidenced by either an executed lease agreement or executed commitments. Preferences are going to be given to developers who commit to securing locally minority-owned and women-owned businesses. In terms of the construction, the developer of this project must commit to commence construction on the project within 12 months of the date from the executed grant agreement. So 12 months, 1 year, from the date of the executed grant agreement. So we know what are eligible. What is not eligible? Under this RFA, adult entertainment, banks, hotels, nightclubs, cell phones, provider of services, seasonal business providers, tax preparation businesses, theaters, sports arenas, religious facilities, schools, a full hospital, processing plants, refineries are not eligible. And quite frankly, any project that DEMPED in its sole discretion will identify as ineligible is ineligible. So, eligible applicants. If you are a 501c3 nonprofit, a joint venture, partnership, a cooperative, a limited liability company or corporation, if you're a for-profit or nonprofit developer, you're eligible. But you also have to be a registered business in good standing with the DC Department of Consumer and Regulatory Affairs, so that's DCRA, the DC Office of Tax and Revenue, that's OTR, the DC Department of Employment Services, DOES, and the Federal Internal Revenue Service, the IRS. You have to be able to provide proof of property and liability insurance. An insurance quote is permitted for new businesses, but they have to be compliant with the requirements set forth in the grant application, the RFA. And you have to be able to provide site control of the business property. So for the purposes of this RFA, site control means that the applicant has either obtained an enforceable right to use the parcel of land for the purpose of the project facility for the life of the project facility. And that right has to be conveyed formally in writing. Verbal permission is not sufficient. You can evidence this by a contract of sale, a letter of intent, an option to purchase agreement, fee simple ownership, general warranty deed, or an executed contract or lease with the property owner with a minimum and expired term of at least 10 years. And the applicant that received any applicant that received Neighborhood Prosperity Fund awards within the last 3 years are ineligible to apply for the awarded project or an awarded project. Neighborhood Prosperity Fund grants can be used for architectural and engineering costs, construction costs, tenant improvement, historical preservation build-out, development analysis, rent abatement for up to 3 years to stabilize market rent. The funds can also be used to pay for design and construction, invoices or expenses that were paid prior to the date of the executed grant agreement are ineligible. Development consulting fees are limited to no more than 10% of the full pre-development budget. I'm going to say that again. Development consulting fees shall be limited to no more than 10% of the full pre-development budget. And unless DEMPED has decided to give an exception, we ask that you stay within this parameter. You cannot use the fund to acquire or purchase property, pay for federal or district taxes, use it to satisfy any liens or related penalties, any government impositions or organizational overhead, food, equipment, organizational capacity building, transportation, or debt service. Please note that DEMPED reserves the right to review and approve or disapprove of fund uses. Let's talk about the application. DEMPED is requesting applications in the following sections in a PDF format to respond to the FY21 Neighborhood Prosperity Fund RFA. The applications will be evaluated based on the following criteria below. If you fail to demonstrate how the proposed project meets the criteria, then it might reduce your score. Applications should be prepared on 8.5 by 11-inch page format, and it sounds like that should be sort of known, but we are stating it. There's sometimes people use A4. That's not going to work. We do need 8.5 by 11-inch. Please use 11 or 12-point Arial, Calibri, or Times New Roman type, and submit electronically through, it says Blackboard, but it's actually GIF online. The application has to include only the requested information below. First, a cover page, please, with your contact information for the applicant. It has the business name, the key contact, their mailing address, telephone, and email. Please ensure that you are utilizing an email address that you will be checking, because this is how we will be communicating with you. And then there's a narrative for the RFA. Your narrative for the RFA includes the executive summary, the development team identities and details, statements regarding debarment, suspension, bankruptcy, or loan default, market and financial feasibility of the project, the proposed job creation and economic benefits, and local business and community outcomes. You are strongly encouraged to refer to the request for applications for additional information and guidance on these sections, and I can also answer some questions as able within the RFA to respond to any inquiry that you have or need for clarification. Your application also will include several exhibits. Exhibit A is about your development team. So this is the development team's resumes, the org chart, if you have a design team, their resumes, and any organizational documents, including your certificate of good standing. They will all be compiled together. You should separate them with a document in between that makes the A1 and the name of the development team resumes, and put those things behind it. Exhibit B is the development pro forma. Then you have Exhibit C, which is your sources and uses. Exhibit D is your evidence of site control. Exhibit E is your financial partners. So however this project is being financed, who are they and how much are they contributing? And Exhibit F, which is local business tenancy. And this comprised of the name of the business and letter of intent, if that's there. Well, actually, letter of intent. And F2 for the exhibit is the lease term. So it's going to evidence whether you're doing rent reductions, some abatements, amenities, or an option to purchase their property, if that's part of how your project is done. In the application review, it is going to include 3 phases. There's initial screening. So prior to the formal review process, your application is going to receive an initial administrative screening, and it makes sure that all the required forms, the signatures, the documents are present. Applications will not be evaluated by the review panel if it is received after the closing date, if the package is not complete, if the project synopsis or description fails to address the program priorities, and if the application does not fall within the scope of the RFA. I cannot encourage you enough. Please double check that you've dotted every I, that you have crossed every T, that you have uploaded the documents that are required, because there is not an opportunity to submit it after you have pressed the button in the system. We will not accept any changes. After the initial screening, the independent review panel will will be comprised of external individuals that will review each application and submit a scoring and a ranking and a comment that will come to DEMPED. There is also a review that is done by the program team. And I also will be reviewing every application to make sure that it aligns with what the independent review panel also showed, or not, if there's something that they may have missed. And upon the review of the external and the internal recommendations, again, looking at the mayor's budget priorities, the resources that are available, the goals that we're seeking to achieve, and to balance that for the communities that we're serving, and overall the goals of the program, DEMPED will make the final funding decision. The final funding decision cannot be contested or appealed. It is written in the RFA. It is spoken here in this information session. It cannot be contested or appealed. As the solicitation is open and I am the program administrator for it, I'm limited to the type of questions that I can answer. So questions that, particularly those that might be more specific to your project and project proposal, should be directed to the grants team. The grants team is at DEMPED, dmped.grants@dc.gov. Sandra Villarreal is the grants manager and has been identified in the RFA. Her or her designee will be responding to any questions that you have. There are some, again, questions that I can respond to as it relates to the RFA to be able to direct you and give some guidance. Also, if you would like to contact me and reach me, you may be able to do so through the program email at breakstreet@dc.gov. And again, I'm Stephanie Thomas, the Director of Break Street in Retail, and absolutely excited and humbly serving in the Office of the Deputy Mayor for Planning and Economic Development. So with that being said, I'm going to stop sharing the screen and open the floor for you to be able to ask questions. And I see we have a few people here, so welcome again. So you may unmute yourself and ask a question. We have a small group, so if you want to use the chat feature as well, that is okay. Or you can unmute yourself. So I'll just pause for a second and give you an opportunity to do so if there are any questions. No questions?
Hey, Stephanie,
Hello.
this is in terms of this grant is sort of a three-part grant. I guess food grant,
Food, health
merchandise.
equity, and economic. Yes, so it's not necessarily a three-part grant. So, and maybe, and thank you for asking that question. So if you refer back to the request for application, and I'll highlight this as well. So there are a set of questions that every applicant will answer because it will always fall under what we consider the classic Neighborhood Prosperity Fund, which is around economic growth and employment. And then as the projects are there are projects that will be food focused and there will be projects that will be healthcare focused. And there are a set of questions that are specific to those type of projects that should be responded to as well. You do not have to be all. You can just focus on one. If you're focusing on food, food is your thing. If you think there's a combination between the economic vitality, growth, employment, and food, and healthcare, respond in that way. But you don't have to check all the boxes for each one. You may just generally feel like we will be meeting the funding priority under economic growth and employment.
You also mentioned that it was out of 4 criteria, you need to have at least 2 being located in, retail and housing, or is that going to be the case for each of these grants, I guess?
So it is, okay, ask me the question one more time because I just want to make sure that I'm responding, that I understood it properly.
Yeah, in the slide deck, you mentioned you had to meet at least 2 criteria in terms of, it looks like placement where your
Mhm.
location would be. Is that going to be the case for all of these, all three of these grants?
No, so I think at its core,
Mhm.
as long as your project is either in a mixed-use development for which we're only funding the commercial portion, and if it is commercial, then is it going to have an office? Is it going to have a retail component?
Mhm.
A larger commercial development, I apologize, we probably should have made that a little bit clearer. Yeah. If it's 100%, we can see more of that mixture. But I think at the core, to just make sure everyone knows that they're eligible to apply, as long as your project is either, and the request that you're making is going to support a mixed-use development project where the money is going to the commercial portion, or a full 100% commercial development, you should be eligible to apply, even if there's some mixture of the types that are there.
Understood. Thank you.
You're welcome. Are there any other questions? Okay. Well, seeing none, I'm glad that you have attended. We have been having a couple of full houses on our sessions. And again, please refer to the RFA for your guidance. It is what will govern how we will do the review. You certainly can reach out to demped.grant@dc.gov for any questions. And I am hopeful that you will all submit applications and be able to put in for an opportunity at this $3.185 million pool of money. It's a great program, and I look forward, if you do submit an application, to reviewing them as well. That's it. I guess I could give you guys back the rest of your half an hour of this window. You're welcome, everyone. Have a great weekend. Bye.